So in Mondo Zen koan process, the eighth koan asks us, does this clear, deep heart mind come and go? And we're directed to get in touch with our deepest self, to feel this clear, deep heart mind, to feel this open-heartedness. And then from this depth of awareness, we ask ourselves, does this come and go? And of course, the answer is no. This clear, deep heart mind does not come and go. So then we ask ourselves, so what or who comes and goes? And of course, the answer is you do, we do, I do. It's our sensing, it's our feeling, it's our ego's awareness of clear, deep heart mind that comes and goes. We know that clear, deep heart mind is always here. So an ego with the correct understanding can be informed and then transformed by clear, deep heart mind realization, and of course by studying the Mondo Zen koan practice. And then with this realization, as Jumpo often reminded us, we can experience the state that nothing can destabilize us, nothing can frighten us, nothing can overwhelm our conscious awareness. Our ego can remain intact and still function, but can now be re-educated and transformed. Now, looking at the people on this call, I can be fairly certain that all of you understand this. You've all been taught this. You know it. Maybe you even teach it to other people. I'd be very surprised if it was new to you. I know this. I teach this. Now, I can only speak for myself, but I do still get angry. I do still get annoyed. I get frustrated. I get frightened on occasions, overwhelmed. I still experience a cacophony of negative emotions on a weekly basis. So even though I know that this clear, deep heart mind doesn't come and go, even though I know that it's my awareness of it that comes and goes, I have to ask myself, what's preventing me from stabilizing this realization? What's blocking me? Now, in the Buddhist tradition, we have a teaching called the 5 hindrances. And the 5 hindrances are identified as mental factors that hinder progress in our meditation and also hinder progress in our daily life. And engaging with the 5 hindrances skillfully can change our practice from a frustrating chore to more of a nourishing and insightful experience that the 8th koan actually points us to. So what are the 5 hindrances? Well, they are laziness and lethargy, doubt, aversion, agitation, and desire. Now, the word itself, hindrance, suggests that they are blocks in our path. They somehow block our path. But I actually find it more helpful to think of them more as the landscape that the path will inevitably pass through. Now, like any landscape, this path can be sometimes smooth and pleasant, and other times it can be difficult and uncomfortable. So the hindrances are the painful but natural expressions of the heart and the mind when it's experiencing suffering. And working with them is how we deepen our own practice. So when exploring the hindrances and their impact on us and on our practice, it's important to remember that none of us are wrong. None of us are bad. None of us are at fault for having these kinds of so-called negative experiences. They can actually be thought of as symptoms of a underlying condition, underlying disconnection or dissatisfaction. We can view them as old wounds. Some of these wounds may be personal, some may be familial, some may be cultural. But if we can remember that they don't actually indicate anything about our own worth or our own goodness, then they become much easier for us to really work with. So the hindrances are essentially habits of the heart and the mind that like many of our other unconscious tendencies, tend to be rooted in the heart's attempt to stay safe in what we often perceive as an unsafe world. They can be reactive, they can be judgmental, and above all, they are not really under our conscious control, at least not at first. But of course, with practice, they can be brought under our conscious control. Sometimes they can be so familiar to us that they actually start to feel like they're part of our personality. We may even wear them as an identity. We may make statements like, I'm lazy, as opposed to, I'm currently experiencing a state of laziness. But in our practice, we begin to see that they are sometimes present and they are sometimes not. They're quite contextual. They depend on the conditions that we find ourselves in. So once we recognize their presence, Buddha's teachings then encourage us to actively set up the conditions for the hindrance to diminish. So each of these 5 hindrances also has an antidote, a cure, a way of relieving or at least initially reducing the impact that the hindrances cause. So let's explore these 5 hindrances. And the first one, as I mentioned, is laziness and lethargy. And laziness usually arises when the mind interprets that the cost of an activity outweighs its benefits. It's easier not to do something than actually do it. And I'm sure many of us have experienced reasons why I don't need to sit on the cushion today, reasons why I don't need to chant, why I don't need to practice the morning service. I've got other things I could be doing instead, which seem maybe more important. And this can lead to the energetic state of lethargy, a state of lack of energy, of procrastination, putting off until later what I should be doing now, or putting off until tomorrow what I should be doing today. A state of low motivation. Interestingly, busyness, the opposite, is also a mental factor that tends to distract the mind from the right action, because busyness distracts the self with non-essentials. And this can lead to distraction, a scattered energy, or overcommitting to karmically unproductive actions, which of course inadvertently leads to an exhaustion of resources. And this is one of the reasons that Zen, especially monastic Zen, is so formalized. Just do this work, just focus on this task, just be right here now. Now, the antidote to laziness and lethargy is directed attention. And this is developing an attitude of no excuses. Like the great American Bodhisattva Nike says, just do it, get it done. Don't procrastinate, don't put it off. Practice directing our attention to the object of the meditation, to the study of the Dharma. And this will lead to an increase in energy and resolution, hopefully. Now, again, this may not happen overnight. It probably won't happen overnight. If you're a serial procrastinator like myself sometimes, then it's not going to be a quick fix. It may take time. You may need some help. And again, this is why Sangha is important. Reach out, ask people for help, for guidance, for advice. Regardless, you'll definitely need to take responsibility. Now, the second hindrance is doubt. And the traditional translation of this hindrance is actually skeptical doubt. And it points to the difficulty that loss of faith, or no longer trusting in the Dharma or the Sangha, or even our teachers sometimes can bring. And for many of us, skepticism of external things and also people is actually easier than having faith in them, especially if we have a history of being let down by people or institutions. But even more challenging is finding confidence or faith in ourselves. And because of this, many people suffer from the personal hindrance of self-doubt, or what we would call in the West, low self-esteem. So just as we continue to cultivate faith in the triple gem being the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as an antidote to doubts about the teachings or the path we walk, also remembering our own natural goodness and our own good intentions is a helpful antidote to the often convincing stories that our own self-doubt tells us. Now, in Buddhist stories, in Buddhist literature, doubt is often personified as a spirit called Mara, which literally means or literally translates as death. And Mara often shows up to convince the Buddha or to convince his disciples to give up their renunciant life and return to lay life. They want to, Mara wants to sow seeds of doubt into their practice, into their belief, into their faith. Mara will often challenge them on the choices they make, attempting to sow these seeds of doubt. In one story, the Buddha lies down for a sleep and Mara appears and accuses him of laziness. And the Buddha's response was simple. He simply looked at Mara and said, "Mara, I see you." And every time Mara approached the Buddha to try and sow these seeds, the Buddha's response was always the same. "Mara, I see you." And this is one of the main antidotes to doubt, which is seeing and naming it for what it is. Because doubt is primarily a story, something the mind comes up with that wants us to turn away from the path that we've chosen. Mara wants us to give up. And often the energy of giving up and deciding that we can't accomplish a goal can be quite seductive in a strange sense, and it can often seem quite reasonable. When we see this discouraging narrative for what it is, the story begins to lose some of its power over us. It becomes weakened, it becomes loosened. And again, it's simple to say this, but it's not necessarily easy to do in practice. Again, it may take time and you may need help. Doubt can often be very difficult to dispel alone, and that's why Sangha is so important. It doesn't need to be a solitary path. And the third hindrance is agitation. And if you think about it, agitation is actually the opposite imbalance to laziness and lethargy. And agitation is a compound word that includes both a bodily and a mental manifestation of excess energy or high energy. And again, this is a common hindrance that many of us have probably felt in many aspects of our lives, especially with the fast pace that we tend to live now, multitasking, short attention spans we've become accustomed to. In meditation, it can often take time for us to actually come into this state of stillness, either because our body is restless, I just can't sit still, or because my mind is restless, I just cannot focus. Interestingly, in Jumpo's teachings, if your body is hurting or there's stuff getting in the way, it's not always a meditation issue. It may be a getting yourself healthy issue. Maybe you need to take up yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong to learn to put your body at rest on the cushion. When your body is at rest, your mind can follow. So look after your physical body. Recognize that a lot of what happens in our body and minds leads to distraction. It leads to agitation, which needs us to do a certain kind of work to clear this up, to get more whole. So it doesn't get in the way of our awakening process. And again, it may not be easy. It may require help, counseling or coaching or some sort of therapy. But again, reach out to Sangha. Don't walk the path alone. And the antidote to agitation is meditative joy. And joy overcomes worry through developing optimism and confidence in the direct experience. That could be the teachings of Buddhist Dharma, an awareness of the reality of the sacred world, achieving a state of samadhi. So look after your body, meditate, settle more, and then this quality will arrive. The eighth step on the Eightfold Path assures us of this. You'll still need to do the work, though, to clear up any trauma issues that you may have, to clear up your stuff. As Jumpo often says, or used to say, you need to address the hysterical historical. So again, reach out to Sangha. People can help. And the fourth hindrance is aversion. And this is a negative mental process involving the rejection of experience and the mind's attempt to move away from such experiences. It usually involves avoidance of loss or pain, maybe obscurity and blame. Aversion can also include judgment, criticism, resentment, dissatisfaction, impatience, even boredom. And the antidote to aversion is happiness and contentment. So the mental factor of contentment allows for a deep appreciation of the present moment of experience, what we're currently experiencing right here, right now. It allows for the end of the cycle of avoidance. And again, this is why our gratitude practice is so important. And if you don't currently have a gratitude practice, I'd strongly recommend developing one. Develop the daily discipline to either start or end your day reflecting on the blessings that you have. If we move outside of Buddhist psychology into positive psychology, we now know that developing an attitude of gratitude or a gratitude practice over time can help our brain to rewire itself and start searching for the positive experiences in life, not the negatives. And the final hindrance is desire, sometimes referred to as sensual desire or grasping. And this hindrance is present when our peace of mind is interrupted by cravings for any kind of pleasurable sense experience. Now, traditionally, it was emphasized or was emphasizing the dangers of lust, especially in a monastic context. But sensual desire can also focus on any object of the senses, such as food or alcohol or drugs, beauty, being too comfortable, even wholesome stimulating experiences like learning or the human connection. Now, desire colors our experience. It creates a sharp feeling of wanting things to be other than they actually are. And the antidote for desire includes renunciation, turning away from the distracting stimuli, or investigating the experience of desire through our meditation. And when you do that, when you actually investigate desire, we often discover an underlying lack or a loneliness, maybe boredom or a loss of purpose that's too painful to experience or feel directly. So our attention seeks stimulation from the outside to cover this. And if we can be honest with ourselves and accept that sometimes we don't always get what we want, that the world can be a painful place, that there is suffering, that it becomes easier to feel the dissatisfaction that's fueling this hindrance. And eventually this will help us to find freedom from the constant craving. Allow us to reach a state of equanimity and a sort of a mental sense that everything is perfect the way it is. Now, again, I don't want to oversimplify that. Addiction is a real issue for many people, and it does require more professional help than a simple Dharma talk. But again, Sangha is there, so reach out for help. It's not a path you have to walk alone. So I encourage you to look at these hindrances as natural expressions of the nervous system trying to stay safe, or look at them as impersonal reactions to the discomfort that we experience in life, to loss, and to the dangers that are inevitable in our life experiences. And then we can begin to understand that the conditions in which these hindrances arise and thrive and eventually go away. And this can teach us how to create more supportive conditions for the heart and the mind to settle, to come out of unnecessarily activated states. And then we can experience the joy and the ease of a undistracted presence, a peace of mind. And it's at that place that we can then realize, we can truly experience that this clear, deep heart mind does not come and go. We begin to embody the eighth koan. So thank you. That's my Dharma talk. Does anybody have any questions?